Don't take the job at Hollow Glen Funeral Home, no matter how broke you are, no matter how desperate you get, because the dead don't always stay dead here. I learned that the hard way during my third shift when one of the bodies sat up and whispered my name. There are rules here, 7 of them. They seem insane until you break one. I did. And now, one of them won't stop following me. My name is Darren Cole, 29, broke, and borderline homeless when this all started. After getting laid off from my factory job and falling behind on rent, I took a night shift position at Hollow Glen Funeral Home, a quiet, aging building nestled on the outskirts of Lincoln County, Tennessee. It sounded perfect. No people, decent pay, and nothing but dead silence. Literally, the funeral home was run by an old man named Mr. Howarth. Tall, cadaverous, always in a black 3-piece suit and bow tie, as if he were trying to blend in with his clientele. That he didn't talk much when I came in for the interview. Just looked at me with pale, watery eyes and said, "This job is simple. Do your rounds, lock the doors, watch the monitors, and most importantly, follow the rules." He handed me a single crumpled sheet of paper with typed rules, 7 in total. I'll get to those in a minute, but I should have walked out right then, because Rule 1 already made my skin crawl. That the rules of Hollow Glen Funeral Home: never open a casket between 1 o'clock and 3:33 a.m., even if you hear knocking from the inside, especially if you hear your own voice calling out. The chapel lights will flicker at 2:13 a.m. exactly. This is normal. Do not investigate the source. If the corpse in viewing room 3 opens its eyes, calmly say, "You are at peace, return to rest." Then close the door and leave immediately. Do not answer the landline if it rings more than once. The second call is never from the living. Avoid looking at the mirrors after midnight. If you see a reflection that isn't yours, leave the room without blinking. Leave a fresh white lily on the embalming table before 4 a.m. every night. No exceptions. If someone knocks at the back door asking for Father Jeremiah, you are already in danger. Run. Do not turn around. Do not speak. Are you in? At the time, I chuckled. I assumed this was some twisted joke to haze new hires. Mr. Howarth didn't smile. "People often think they know what death is," he said quietly, tapping the paper. "But here, in this place, death is just the beginning." He left me the keys and walked out into the foggy night without another word. That first night, I sat in the control room, sipping coffee, surrounded by dusty monitors showing every corner of the home. Nothing happened for the first hour, or the second, but at exactly 2:13 a.m., the chapel lights flickered. Not once, not twice, but in a pulsing, deliberate rhythm, almost like Morse code. I stayed put. Rule 2. But that's when I noticed something. On monitor 6, viewing room 3. The body inside, a man in his mid-50s who died of a stroke, was lying still in his casket. Except his eyes were open, wide open, staring up. Rule 3. I reread it, heart pounding. Calmly say, "You are at peace, return to rest." Then close the door and leave. I made my way down the dark hallway, each fluorescent light humming as I passed beneath. The carpet muffled my footsteps. The funeral home smelled like roses and something else, formaldehyde and old secrets. I reached the room. The door creaked open. He was still staring. My mouth was dry, but I said the words, "You are at peace, return to rest. And I swear to you." He blinked, just once, then closed his eyes. I backed out of the room, locked the door, and nearly threw up in the hallway. But that wasn't the worst part of the night. No, that happened at 3:27 a.m. when I heard knocking from inside a casket in the prep room. It was a dull, rhythmic knock. 3 times. Pause. 3 more times. And then my voice. "Darren, help me. It's so cold in here. Let me out." I froze. My own goddamn voice was coming from inside the casket. Rule 1. Never open a casket between 1 o'clock and 3:33 a.m., especially if you hear your own voice. The knocking turned into scratching, like nails dragging against wood. I backed away, heart hammering, and turned off the lights to the prep room. The scratching stopped. After that, the shift was quiet. Too quiet. At 4 a.m., I placed a white lily on the embalming table, per rule 6. I didn't ask why. I didn't want to know. The rest of the shift passed in silence. I left at dawn, half convinced I'd imagined everything. But the next night, things escalated. Because the man in viewing room 3, he He was no longer in his casket. And the camera feed showed him standing in the hallway, staring directly at the camera. The first time I saw a corpse walking down the hallway, I thought I'd finally lost my mind. Not stumbled, not crawled, walked, wearing the same black suit, withered hands swinging gently at its sides. No blood, no missing limbs, no gore. Just wrong movement, like a marionette held up by invisible wires. Controlled, intentional, the man from viewing room 3. The one whose eyes had opened the night before. I was in the security office, glued to monitor 6, when I saw him, just standing in the hallway outside the room, perfectly still, staring directly into the camera. The feed crackled with light static, like old VHS fuzz. Then he smiled. I fell back in my chair. When I looked again, he was gone. The hallway, empty. My first thought wasn't panic. It was denial. Okay, Darren. You're overtired. You're seeing things. So I ran to the hallway with my flashlight. Cold sweat slicked my shirt. The lights buzzed above like angry wasps. I checked the entire corridor. Nothing. But when I returned to the viewing room, I stopped cold. The casket was empty. The lid flung open. The silk lining, wrinkled, with deep indentations, like someone had climbed out. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed my phone and called Mr. Howarth. Is the casket open? He asked calmly. Yes. And the body's gone. What the hell do I do? Check the embalming table. Why would he be there? Check it, Darren. And remember Rule 3. I sprinted down the east corridor, through a set of old metal doors, and into the prep room. And there he was, lying on the table, dead still, eyes closed. A lily already placed on his chest. But I hadn't put it there. I backed out of the room slowly. This wasn't just paranormal. This was intelligent, intentional, ritualistic, and someone, or something, was helping him move. 2:13 a.m. The chapel lights flicker again the second night. I began to notice the patterns that 2:13 a.m. sharp. Just like the rules said, the chapel lights flickered again. Only this time, the pews were not empty. I saw silhouettes at first, just one or two. Then half a dozen, shadowy figures sitting silently, facing forward, heads tilted upward, as if waiting for a sermon that would never come. I couldn't move. I stared at the monitor, heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. One of the figures turned. Its face was blank, pale and bloodless, but its eyes were full of recognition, like it knew me. The lights flickered again, and all the pews were suddenly empty. I didn't leave the control room again that night. I didn't sleep when I got home, either, because that face, I'd seen it before. It was my grandfather, dead for nearly 12 years. Day 3, the landline rings twice. By the third night, I thought I'd seen the worst of it, but then came the phone call that I'd just finished doing rounds when the landline on the desk rang. I froze. It was exactly 2:59 a.m. The phone had never rung before. Rule 4. Do not answer the landline if it rings more than once. I let it ring. Once, twice, then silence. But after 5 seconds, it rang again. 2 short chirps. I shouldn't have picked it up, but something in me needed to know. Hello, I whispered, static. Then a soft, wet voice. Darren, you broke the rule. Now you have to answer for it. Then came a low breathing noise, like someone exhaling directly into the receiver. Not through lungs, through rotted gills. Click. Dead air. I put the phone down, hands shaking. But the room didn't feel empty anymore. I turned slowly, and there, on the far end of the hallway, I saw a figure standing in front of a mirror, pale, barefoot, wearing a funeral shroud, not moving, just watching me. Through the reflection. I blinked, and it was gone. 3:33 a.m. The final rule begins to wake that night. I almost broke Rule 7. The back door knocked once, twice. Then, is Father Jeremiah in? I froze. My mouth went dry. Rule 7. If someone knocks at the back door asking for Father Jeremiah, you are already in danger. Run. Do not turn around. Do not speak. Run. I backed away slowly. My legs were jelly, but then the voice whispered again, closer this time. Father Jeremiah, we remember what you did. I turned. Just for a second. I shouldn't have turned, but I did, and what I saw still haunts me. A man in priest robes, but his face was carved away, smooth and wet, like skin flayed clean. Just a black void where his face should have been. His hands were burned down to bone. His left eye dangled from the socket by a tendon, And yet he was smiling. I ran until I nearly passed out behind the embalming room. The secrets of the mirrors. That morning, Mr. Howarth waited for me in the lobby. He looked even more pale than usual. "You turned," he said without asking. "Who the hell is Father Jeremiah?" "A man who defied death," Howarth said, locking the chapel behind him. "A priest who tried to raise the dead to save his son. He performed forbidden rites, blood rituals, sacrifices. This place was his cathedral." I just stared at him. "The mirrors," I whispered. "They watch us." "No," he replied. "They remember us." "That's far worse." Before I left, he gave me a new piece of paper. A new rule added in ink at the bottom. 8. Never look at yourself in the mirror after you've broken a rule. What looks back isn't you anymore. Later that day, something follows me home. That morning, when I got back to my apartment, I noticed muddy footprints in my hallway. I live alone. They led from the front door to the mirror in my bathroom. And on the mirror, scrawled in what looked like dried blood, were the words, "Do you see it too?" I don't remember falling asleep, but when I woke up, the footprints were gone. The mirror was clean, but my reflection, it blinked. Before I did. Closing the chapter. By the end of night 3, I understood what this place really was. It wasn't a funeral home. It was a threshold. A doorway to something deeper than death. Something older than the graves it tended. And those rules, they weren't guidelines. They were rituals, locks, seals. And now that I'd broken them, something was waking up. You know that feeling when you realize you've crossed a line you can't come back from? When you feel it deep in your bones, that something ancient is now watching you. That was me. After I turned toward the back door, after I broke rule 7. After I saw Father Jeremiah. 7:04 p.m. Clock and I pulled into the lot outside Hollow Glen Funeral Home and sat in my car for 20 minutes. I didn't want to go inside. I didn't want to see the man with no face again. But deep down, I knew this place wouldn't let me leave anymore. It had marked me, and I had answered its call. When I walked inside, I expected Mr. Howarth to greet me, but the lobby was empty. Only the smell of lilacs and decay greeted me, a smell I'd come to associate with death. Pretending to be polite, a note was taped to the control room monitor. "Tonight, the chapel must remain sealed. Do not enter. Do not respond to the chanting. Lock the doors at 8:08 p.m. exactly." Mr. Howarth underneath was scrawled in jagged ink. "And Darren, don't let it see you again. 8:08 p.m. The chapel door at 8:07. I stood outside the chapel, door wide open, pews empty, lights dim, candles flickering, but I hadn't lit them. I checked my phone. 8:08 on the dot. I pushed the heavy doors shut, and just as I did, I heard the singing, low, male voices, in Latin or something older. "Domini mortuorum, aperi portam tuum. Austen nos fiam tuum." "Lord of the dead, open your gate. Show us your path." The hymn echoed from within the chapel, despite the door being shut and locked, and when I turned to walk away, the wood pulsed behind me. Not shook, pulsed, like it was breathing, like something inside had pressed its body against the door, and was sniffing me through the cracks. Rule 3 breaks again. I made my way toward viewing room 3, already dreading what I might find. The camera feed had cut out 20 minutes earlier. That's never good. When I reached the hallway, the door was wide open. The corpse, gone again. But this time, he wasn't in the prep room or the chapel or any of the monitors. Instead, I heard the unmistakable creak of floorboards above me. But Hollow Glen Funeral Home has no second floor, at least not one that shows up on the blueprints. The secret floor, I found the staircase behind the embalming room. It was hidden behind a sliding panel in the wall, as if the whole damn place had been designed to lie. The stairs were rotted, narrow, and coated in dust so thick it looked like snow. At the top was a single wooden door with a rusted crucifix nailed upside down above it. My hand hesitated on the knob. The air was wrong, heavy, like walking into a place where God had been asked to leave. I pushed it open. Inside was a small stone chapel. Candles lined the walls. Bones, human, were arranged in symbols along the floor. And at the center stood the corpse from viewing room 3. Wearing priest's robes, he turned slowly. "Father Jeremiah has returned," he said in a voice that wasn't his own. "And tonight, he preaches." His face cracked like dry clay, revealing black veins underneath. Eyes burned red, Like coals under a bed of ash, he raised his arms. And the candles flared with black flame. Suddenly, the walls shifted, warping like flesh under heat. The room wasn't real anymore. That IT was a memory. A prison. A temple. He brought back his son, the corpse said. But the boy came back wrong. And now, someone else must take his place. He pointed at me. You broke the rules. You saw behind the curtain. You're ready now. I ran. Mirror world. The other side, I had bolted down the stairs. But when I entered the embalming room, it wasn't the same. The air was damp. The walls bled sap-like liquid. And the mirrors, there were dozens now, lining the walls. Each one showed a version of me, but not quite me. One had no eyes. Another was grinning wide enough to tear the skin. One wore the black robes of Father Jeremiah, and all of them turned to look at me in sync. Do you see us now? They whispered, voices overlapping like radio static. I slammed my eyes shut. I remembered Rule 8. Never look at yourself in the mirror after breaking a rule. Too late. They had seen me point. One of the mirrors cracked. Then another, until one shattered completely, and something crawled out. A figure. Skinless. Black veins pulsing like roots. That IT didn't walk. It dragged itself forward, spine clicking. Its face was my face. If someone had removed it and tried to reattach it upside down. IT lunged. I blacked out. 4:00 a.m. The lily ceremony. I woke up in the chapel. Not the secret one. The main one. But this time, it was full. Every pew had a corpse. Their heads turned to look at me. Mr. Howarth stood at the altar, holding a silver lily, petals gleaming with blood. The ritual was broken. The balance disrupted, he said. Now the lily must be offered at the roots, or the soil will rot, and the dead will walk freely. He handed me the flower. Take it to the grave beneath the embalming table. The original grave. The grave beneath under the table, hidden behind old pipes and bolted panels. I found a trapdoor. Below it was a burial chamber. A single coffin sat at the center. Not wooden, stone, carved with names in Latin and symbols older than any I've seen. I placed the lily on the lid. And I swear, something inside sighed. The air lightened, just for a moment. Then the lid shifted. Too late. A voice whispered behind me. I turned, and standing there was the boy. Father Jeremiah's son, older than 10, but with dead, yellow eyes and teeth too many for his mouth. He smiled, and the chapel above us screamed. Ending scene. I made it out just as dawn broke. Mr. Howarth was waiting in the parking lot, arms crossed. You survived, he said. Barely. You still have one more night. Then it decides if you stay, or if you join them. I looked back at the building. The windows were filled with faces now, watching, waiting. One of them smiled. IT was me. They say rules exist to keep us safe. But what if the rules were written to keep something else in? The fourth night. The last shift. Or so I hoped. Why now? Hollow Glen Funeral Home wasn't just a workplace. It was a living organism. Its walls breathed. Its halls remembered. And its rules weren't protecting me anymore. They were keeping me just long enough to finish something ancient. When I parked my car at 6:59 p.m., I already knew I wasn't walking out the same man. And I might not walk out at all. 7:00 p.m. The new rule appears. I stepped into the control room. The air inside was ice cold. The monitors were off. My reflection in the blank screen stared back at me. Smiling. On the desk was a fresh sheet of paper, typed. Yellowed. OLD.IT simply read. The final rule. Do not read the last rule until the others have been broken. When you begin to remember things you never lived, do not resist. You are being prepared. The final sermon begins at 3:33 a.m. Bring no light. Speak no names. Come alone. If you bring anyone else, they will not remain human. The note was signed. FJ Father Jeremiah. I stared at it for 10 minutes before the lights flickered in the embalming room. The cameras powered on one by one. But this time, they weren't showing the funeral home. They were showing memories, not mine. The camera feeds show the past. Monitor 1. A grainy black and white image of a young boy being strapped to a stone table. Monitor 2. Priests chanting in a circle, wearing masks carved from bone. Monitor 3. The chapel, decades ago, filled with robed bodies, all rising as one, facing the altar where a pale, eyeless thing slithered across the ceiling like a spider. And on Monitor 6, the screen that had always shown viewing room 3. I saw myself, lying in a casket, eyes wide, smiling that I ripped the plug from the wall. The screen stayed on 09:00 p.m. Mr. Howarth's confession. Mr. Howarth emerged from the shadows behind me. This time, no pretense. He looked even older, frail, as if the past 3 days had drained centuries from him. "You've lasted longer than most," he said. "What the hell is happening?" I asked. "You already know. You felt it. You've remembered what doesn't belong to you." "Who was the boy?" "Jeremiah's son," he whispered. "The first attempt at resurrection. It worked. But what came back wasn't his child." "Then what was it?" "A hole in the world, wearing a boy's face." He handed me a small leather journal. Ancient, brittle. Inside were the original rules, handwritten. But not just 7. Not 8. There were 33. "Each new guardian only sees what they're ready for," he said. "You were chosen, just like me. I didn't ask for this. None of us did. But once the chapel marks you, there's no turning back. Then why stay? Because if we don't keep the rules, the thing below doesn't stay." Buried. Midnight. The false funeral at midnight. The chapel bells rang, but they were cracked, rusty, and they rang 13 times. I checked the chapel cameras. Rows of mourners filled the pews, but every single one was dead, bloated, blue. Eyes open, mouth sewn shut. At the altar stood Father Jeremiah. Wearing my face, he raised a hand, and the crowd stood in unison. He began to speak, but no sound came, just static, and blood pouring from the speakers. I fled the room. 2:45 a.m. Descend into the grave. The final sermon was coming. I had to go beneath. I returned to the stone trapdoor under the embalming table. This time, it opened on its own. Stairs descended into pitch darkness. I held no flashlight. The rules were clear. Only silence, only shadow, only memory. At the bottom, I entered the root chamber at a colossal underground crypt, lined with human bones stacked like books. At its center was a tree, dead, but still weeping black sap. Its roots pierced coffins. Its trunk was carved with hundreds of names, including my own, and hanging from the branches were faces, skinned, preserved, and smiling. The boy was waiting, no longer a child, now a vessel of pure decay, eyes like oil spills, mouth full of rot and hymns. "You are the last one," he said. "The last key. Read the rule. Accept what you've always been." He stepped aside. On the bark of the tree, carved deeper than any wound, was the final line. Rule 34. If you break them all, you become one. And then I remembered, not imagined, remembered that I'd worked here before. Dozens of times. Hundreds. Every generation, a new name, a new face, but the same soul. Mine. Recycled. Found out I had always worked here, and now it was my turn to write the rules. 3:33 a.m. The sermon begins in the main chapel. They waited. The congregation of the dead. I stood at the altar. Not Mr. Howarth, not Father Jeremiah. Me, but not Darren anymore. Something else wore my face now. And it smiled. 4:00 a.m. Rebirth. The next morning, the sun rose over Hollow Glen. A new young man pulled into the lot. Desperate, broke, hopeful. Mr. Howarth met him at the door. Only it wasn't Mr. Howarth anymore. It was me. "Welcome to Hollow Glen," I said, smiling. "The job's simple. Watch the halls. Lock the doors. Keep an eye on the bodies. And whatever happens, follow the rules. Not all who are buried stay buried. Not all rules are meant to protect. Some rules are cages, and some are keys." 4:01 a.m. After the sermon, not Darren Cole anymore. At least not the way I remember. I look in the mirror and see my face, same scar on my brow, same tired eyes, but behind them, something stirs. The thing that's been here all along. Watching, learning, remembering. You see, Hollow Glen wasn't built on land. It was built on memory. Every generation, a soul is pulled into its walls. A watchman, a scribe, a keeper of rules. That's who I've become now. And it's time to tell you everything. The rules weren't for me. They were for you. Let me explain. The rules I followed, the ones you've read, they weren't warnings. They were rituals, incantations, locks. Every time I obeyed one, I sealed something darker away. Every time I broke one, I heard its voice a little clearer, until finally, it knew my name. Until finally, I knew its name. Zaleth. the one buried under all graves. The first undertaker spoke it when he bled out under the roots. Father Jeremiah whispered it when his son came back wearing new skin, and now I carry it inside me. 4:13 a.m. I meet the architect. The door behind the embalming table opened again, but this time I wasn't walking down. I was being pulled. The root chamber was darker now. The black sap from the dead tree had hardened into veins of obsidian, wrapping the entire chamber like armor. And in the center was a throne of caskets, made from every failed guardian who came before me. Seated atop, it was the architect. Not a demon, not a god, just a man with no face and too many eyes across his arms. He was writing on a scroll made of stretched skin, with a quill made from a rib bone. When he looked up, he didn't speak with words. He spoke with memories that I saw. The first night shift, 1861. The mass resurrection of 1913. The chapel devoured in 1959. The last keeper, myself, buried alive in 1994 and reborn in 2024. All versions of me, all erased, until now. Why me? I asked aloud. Because you broke the cycle willingly, the architect replied without speaking. You followed the rules, but not blindly. You disobeyed, but without ignorance. You became what we feared most. A conscious key. I looked down. My skin had started to pale. Veins darkened. My breath fogged even in still air. That I was becoming like them. But I had one final choice. You see, when the final rule is revealed, you get one more. The rule beyond the last point, one that isn't written on paper. One you can't read. You have to feel it. And I did, deep in my bones. In my blood. It whispered. Do you want to keep the rules or destroy them forever? Because once every few hundred years, the funeral home offers one guardian this impossible choice: stay and become the next architect. Or burn it all and set the dead loose. There is no middle. No loophole. No mercy. 5:00 a.m. Fire in the halls. I walked back into the hallway. Candles flickered as I passed. The mirrors cracked. The pews groaned. And the dead stirred. I lit the match from Mr. Howarth's old silver case. Point one matched. That's all it took. The flames caught the old velvet of the chapel seats, the coffin wood, the embalming fluid, the roots beneath the floor, and it screamed, not in fire, but in rage. In freedom, the dead howled from the walls. Corpses banged on their caskets. The air turned to smoke and dust and memories, but I walked through it, untouched, because the fire wasn't burning me. It was burning everything except me, because I was already ash. 6:33 a.m. The sky breaks outside. The sun rose, but the light was wrong. The clouds split, and through them I saw not stars, but eyes. Eyes watching, searching, judging. But they didn't see me anymore. I was between worlds now. A warden of the door. 7:00 a.m. Full circle. A young man stands outside Hollow Glen, desperate, alone, broke. He rings the bell. The door opens, not by hand, but by memory. He finds a note on the desk, typed, faintly burned around the edges. It reads, "Welcome to Hollow Glen Funeral Home. Strange rules must be followed. Lock the doors by 10 p.m. Do not open the caskets between 1 to 3:33 a.m. Speak softly to the ones who watch. Never answer the phone twice. Leave a lily on the table. Do not follow the boy. If Father Jeremiah knocks, run." And at the bottom, freshly written in ink darker than night, 8. If the man in the mirror smiles before you do, it's already too late. And arrow final words, I am still here. I am the man in the mirror, the voice in the hallway, the shadow behind the casket. I was the watcher. Now I am the rule. And someday, when you're lost, desperate, hungry for a job, you'll find Hollow Glen, and the rules will find you. And when they do, don't break them, because I'm the one who wakes up when you do.